Okay, we're getting ready to go with Nik Richie, and I see that Brad Lee is with us. Thank you, Brad. Dan, thanks for always being so loyal and supportive. Really appreciate it. Jolie, nice to have you on. Thank you very, very much. Bill Husselman just joined us. Hi, Bill. Rachel. Hey, Pete joined us too. Hey, Pete. Hope everything's going well at Fairfield. Just finished your school for this year, so congratulations. And Petra, thank you for joining us. We're all starting to roll in now. We'll give it another 30 seconds. By the way, while we're waiting to get started, I'd like to remind all of you that this is going to be a Q&A session. So as we're having the conversation with Nik, just go ahead and put your questions into the Q&A panel in the Zoom panel below, and we'll address those live with an open mic. Also, we encourage you to join the Leadership in the Age of Personalization movement. Follow our YouTube channel and our social media at Glenn Yope so that you can be in touch with our most recent content around leadership in the age of personalization. Do that right now, just before we get started, would you? All right, let's get this thing started, shall we? Well, welcome and good afternoon to the Leadership in the Age of Personalization live stream. Whether you're joining us live on Zoom or YouTube, I'm Glenn Yope, and on behalf of GLLG, thanks for taking some time. We're going to have some fun today. Again, I'd like to remind you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and social media at Glenn Yope. Be part of something significant. Let's redefine what leadership really means. And again, I'd like to remind you all, it's a Q&A session. You can chat all day long. We'll pick that up. We've got GLLG staff on standby to make sure that we're in touch with what you're chatting about. And then we'll get you on the Q&A panel so that you can have an open mic to our special guest today, Nik Richie. So here's a question I have for everyone. What is it that we're all grappling with today, right now? What is it that we're losing sleep over? What's making us scratch our heads and saying, what in the world is happening these days in the world around us, not just at work, but in society? And I think it's fairly clear that whether as individuals, employees, leaders, or organizations, we're dealing with two mega forces right now. The age of standardization, where the institution or the organization defines the individual, and then the age of personalization, where the individual is now defining the ways organizations should learn, work, lead, and conduct business. But how do these two forces coexist at a time where they both need each other? I mean, let's face it. We got to let go of our egos. We got to let go of what's holding us back to really embracing and recognizing that what's slowing progress down is our inabilities to be vulnerable and courageous so that both of these forces can grow stronger together. Because right now they're not respecting one another. They're just feeling threatened by each other rather than finding the value in one another. And so when you think about vulnerability and courage, they're actually two sides of the same coin. You can't be courageous unless you can be vulnerable, and you can't be vulnerable unless you can be courageous. So instead of playing this game, let's create the room for both of these forces to make each other stronger so we can let go and start coexisting with one another. So why isn't this not happening? It's because we're not smart enough or wise enough to be authentic. See, authenticity is what allows us to reveal our deepest vulnerabilities, but it also gives us the strength and the courage to be wiser about what our role is in turning and reinventing everything that we do and how we do it. You know, I think a lot of people waste a lot of time talking about authenticity. Why? Because it's not that it's not important. It's actually extraordinarily important. But what we tend to do is battle the gulf between assimilation and authenticity, being what other people want us to be rather than what we seek to be ourselves. And while we're all in search of a workplace culture that is truly authentic, these tensions that exist between standardization and personalization, they've created an extreme level of polarization because they don't know how to coexist. And it's creating a very unhealthy workplace culture environment. And so what we're doing in the interim? Well, workplaces are actually trying to manufacture authenticity, which doesn't make any sense at all unless they're just trying to control our identity. A lot to take in. Let it simmer. As I introduce you to our guest today, Nik Richie. Now, Nik is a blogger, author, and internet personality, best known as the CEO of celebmagazine.com, a lifestyle brand that concentrates on affluent entertainment and profiles unique celebrities and influential people and travel destinations. In fact, it was this week in Vegas, and right now Nik's in New York, but this week in Vegas, Nik launched a new travel show that he hosts called 10M, which stands for 10 minutes. And the show debuted on social media platforms as well as celebmagazine.com. So before we bring Nik on, let's roll it, Paulo. Nik, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited for this. I've been waiting for this for months. I'm honored to finally be cool enough to be on this show.
Well, I don't know if this is about being cool enough. It's probably being brave enough, because we're really going to talk about real issues today. You know, I met Nik through our children. My daughter and Nik's young boy they're classmates. In fact, our kids would hold hands in the playground. In fact, his son was my daughter's first crush. So I had to get to know who this man was that showed up at school with these cool glasses and this Harvard hat. And we're going to learn what all that means in just a moment. But we had dinner and the rest is history. You know, today's not going to be what I would consider a standardized interview. And what I'm about to say, please take this very respectfully. I want you to think about yourself as a fly on the wall, listening to a private conversation between two good friends. We're going to keep it real and we're going to speak the truth. And so watch how this takes a different turn here. So I know the title of our session today is your culture truly authentic? Well, that's a question that I'd like for you to ask yourself when we're done with this conversation. So Nik, let's face it. You have had quite a journey in life. You've done some great things, some momentous things. Other things, maybe not so good as perceived by public opinion. Take us through your story. I think it's one of those stories that is hard to believe and maybe a bit complex, but when you really understand it, it makes a lot of sense.
Okay, the story, the never-ending story, I'll start from I call it more of the American dream, and I'll tell you why. Uh, when you become passionate about something and you truly are forced with a decision to go one way or the other, sometimes it's not in your hands, even though you want to control your own destiny. Sometimes the rebellion or the people who fight back at change out of shock force you into a direction. So in 2007, I started a website called thedirty.com, which was kind of different. It was new. It was back when the internet didn't really have rules per se. It was more of like the wild, wild west. So no one knew what was right. No one knew what was wrong. MySpace was a big deal. And we were starting to all learn about social media and what that meant, what privacy meant, because no one really knew. And this leads us kind of back into where we're going today. But I started this site as an underground individual. I wasn't out in the public. What I did was I held the mirror to society and started in Scottsdale, then it got popular. I moved it to, I opened the market in Newport, then Chicago, then Dallas, then went worldwide. So it got up to about 355 markets worldwide, really big in Canada. And I was pretty much the guy that people would submit their neighbor or their boss or, their favorite sports athlete that got caught doing something you shouldn't be doing. And they would ask me for my opinion and I would leave my 2 cents. But why this is such a crazy ordeal is I've been sued over 50 times for you name it, defamation, free speech, libel, just different things that I've won every time because the law, it's called the Communications Decency Act, kind of was the loophole where I rode that wave, and I set precedent, similar to Larry Flint, but I did it for the internet, where we basically set the case law that no third party website owner is held responsible for content submitted. And it was a big deal. So that's kind of the short story. And then I evolved, I sold that company. And then now I was in retirement, as you know, Glenn, for a while. And then COVID happened and I decided, people were getting away with too much. They weren't being truly authentic. And that's how this came about. That's how Celeb came about, because I wanted to bring the light back in, like I did in the past, but more on a real authentic level. But not to shortchange the dirty. We did over 3 billion unique impressions. I broke some of the biggest stories in history. The Trump scandal was probably one of my biggest, with his affair with Stormy Daniels. The Anthony Weiner scandal was a big one. We broke a couple big stories on Kobe Bryant. You name it. There's a laundry list of big stories that came from this, and it made me infamous. And it wasn't always good. It wasn't pretty, but I just kept fighting. Because I believed in people need to be held liable for who they think they are, and they need to see themselves how they're perceived by others. Because I feel like judgment comes from the outside, not from the inside. So that's kind of the short version. But yeah, that's the story so far.
So during this journey, what did you learn about what it means to be authentic? I mean, what did you learn about people? I mean, you were getting bombarded on many fronts.
Well, I would get about 1,000 submissions a day, and I learned that people are inherently evil. They're not truly themselves, and they don't have the capacity to be themselves because they take the shortcuts. And when I say shortcuts, the easiest road to happiness, whatever the quick fix is, it's like making a cup of coffee in the morning, solves all problems. So I think from a bigger perspective, as much as I tried to fight back to make people see reality, they don't want that. You know, and you and
Why
I
don't
had,
people, hold on a second, Nick, why don't people want to embrace reality? I mean,
because reality's
this is
reality's
part of what we're dealing with right now, is that everyone seems to be living in their own reality.
I know, but reality sucks. You look at reality right now. It's not a pretty place. You know, we escape to find a better. We escape to find meaning in ourselves because we think that if we believe in something enough, it becomes real. And that's our biggest issue: is that real, your authentic truth scares people. It scares people a lot because they don't want to know who they really are. They like the bubble. Everyone loves the bubble. It's safe, the safe zone. And you and I, we have lunch, we talk about this, and we go deeper and deeper and deeper. And I hope we do that today. But for me, when I look at someone in the eyes, that doesn't happen. That's not a thing anymore. There's no senses. We're digitally attached to our phone or whatever it is, and we believe what our phone tells us. We don't believe what you tell me, because having human interaction, that's not even a real thing anymore. It's gone.
I want to remind our audience that you have an open mic to this conversation. So put your question in the Zoom module below. I know Brad Lee wants to say something. So, Nick, what do you tell to someone who is having a hard time at work, knowing that they don't trust their leaders, they're having a difficult time feeling that they can be themselves, but more so, those that actually want to contribute but aren't given a chance?
I say, well, my advice is you quit your job and you become a leader. You take the risk and you find the reward. You adapt your life, you change, you cut down your expenses, you do whatever it takes to find your true self. Because we live in a world right now where the fanciest cars, the most likes, you know, we're all metric. We're all metric. We're all numbers, you know, and that's a huge problem, because we look at ourselves from a place of how do we become a boss? And the only way to do that is it's a profit loss. You know, like you're basically showing that you can monetize yourself. And it's the closest thing to prostitution on a level of legality. And from my perspective, I see it all the time. People are so fake, so phony. But the reality is that fake and phoniness is what draws a bigger audience. It's what makes money. And that's how these people in today's society think this is the normal way. This is what authenticity is, which is the furthest thing from the truth. So my advice is always find your true meaning first before you even take on a challenge. Because why jump into the fire pit just because your boss tells you to? Because it's like you think this person's your father or your mother and you live for this person. But why don't we live for ourselves? That's the question.
Well, shouldn't we be living for each other?
No. Sometimes, yes, but we can't do that until we live for ourselves first. If we don't understand ourselves, how are we supposed to help someone else?
We're waiting for the first question. Don't be shy. We're having a real conversation about a lot of things, but it all boils back to authenticity. So what do you tell someone that, well, maybe I have to take a step back. Let me put some context around this next question, Nick. We've been hearing about authenticity for years now, and they'll tell us at work that we want you to bring your whole self and that we want you to feel that you can be who you are. I honestly, and forgive me, authenticity, as we all know, is at the core of personalization. But when do you actually know when you're being authentic? So it took me about 10 years. I'm going to share with you a definition I came up with in terms of what it means to bring your authentic self. And I'll put this in the chat box if you guys want to take it with you, but it's the ability to influence through consistent behavior that reveals your individual capacity, experiences, capabilities, and values without limitations, regardless of the audience before you. Let that one simmer. And then when do you know that you're being your most authentic self? That there's an alignment between what people expect from you and what you want them to expect from you. React to that, Nick, please.
It's so tough because we look at business today and we look at standardization and we look at personalization, and what we're trying to find is the happy medium or the equation where we could put the two together to find the equal answer, which is the perfect environment. And then when you have that perfect environment, you're truly winning as a unit or a team. To achieve that is, I wouldn't say winning the lottery, but it's winning the lottery. If you can make it happen. The problem is that we're in very toxic environments, and your workplace is not about personalization. It's more about standardizing monetary metrics and numbers. When I say what I mean by that is that a person is only good as the dollar that they bring to the table. And that needs to change. That completely needs to change, because it's a very short-term view of being non-authentic, when what we need is to say, okay, well, how do we create the environment, take the loss for a couple of years and build the team, play the long play to have authentic self? Because if we have one person being authentic, guess what happens, Glenn? It's a domino. It's a virus, and it's a positive virus. So creating that is not as easy as it sounds. It's like I tell you all the time, these are just words. How do you make people adapt? How do you brainwash or rewire is a better term, because now we know that our phones and all our mechanics tell us what to believe. So how do you turn that off? It's not possible. So now you're in this fighter pattern. You're just fighting against, the free will of who you think you are. And I learned this the hard way. I kept fighting to tell people that this is crazy. We're living in this society where everything's basically, we're told what to believe. And that trickles down. It trickles down to work. It trickles down to family. It trickles down to your children. And it's a virus. It's a bad one, but how do you reverse it? I couldn't tell you the answer. And I'd be lying to you if I said, hey, this is how we do it. I would say it's not as easy as it sounds.
Well, this is why we created this platform around leadership in the age of personalization, because I think the individual recognizes that they have fallen into standardization traps that it's difficult to get out of. So we're going to actually bring some people into the fold here. I know, Nick, that Brad Lee's giving me a hard time about my jacket. He's asking me if I'm cold. And, I thought that maybe Brad knew a thing or two about being cool. So I wore this for Nick. So you can't get off the hook here, Bradley. How you doing? And what's your question for Nik Richie?
Dude, how'd you get so cool, Nick?
Brad,
how'd you get so cool, bro?
You know what? Honestly, it's everyone you meet in life, you get a little piece of them, and you take the good parts and the bad parts. And I took the best of Brad Lee sometimes, and that helped me become cooler.
Damn. Well, I need to hang out with you more often. And thank you for putting this on, man. I'm going to be having more and more questions as listen. My first question is if you were cold, only because that looks like a very warm jacket.
It is. In my office, it's pretty cold right now too. I'm going to go to Petra. Petra, you had a comment. Petra, you want to join us, please?
Yeah, I'm unmuted?
You're okay.
Okay. I think what I would like maybe to add to this conversation is that, the ability of people in the workplace to really bring their authentic contributions to the table and really, you know, have an impact on some decisions in that way is mostly, you know, a part of what leadership they're working under. And it's I think, as Nik said, it's a wonderful, noble goal to create that psychological safety in the workplace and allow folks to show up, you know, for who they really are. But we still have a lot of environments where people feel unsafe to do so.
I agree. I 100% agree with what you said. And to find true leaders is the hardest thing to do, because true leaders aren't trying to win tomorrow. They see the future. And when we see the future and we have a roadmap to success, you're trying to bring your team with you, because you're only as strong as your team. But if the leader wants to make the quick dollar and he's just trying to get to tomorrow, that's just the recipe for toxic life and toxic work environment, because they're basically sacrificing their teammates for a selfish reason, selfish goal.
Well, you know what, Nik, I was just going to jump in and say, because we've got some more questions here, that we're already seeing a mass exodus of talent, because what the pandemic has done to many leaders is that they've surrendered themselves. In other words, they can't handle the personalization that's coming, the need for personalization that's coming from younger generations that understand and know that business and societal issues are essentially will be connected forever. And they don't want to deal with that. And, you know, that's their prerogative. And so they're already starting to create more and more limitations that individuals expect more of, but they don't want to deal with it. So I'm going to go to the next question. This is a lot. We're going to bring you live here, Pete. And Walt, I'd like for you to comment because Pete's actually going to ask the same question that you did, but he's got a little bit more context. So Pete, fire away.
Hi, Nik. Hi, Glenn. I was just going to ask, because Nik, you mentioned earlier that you come to the recognition that people are evil. But I feel that operating with that mindset that people are bad would just bring about the evilness in people. So how do you expect people to be good or to be, you know, their authentic selves if you treat them like they're evil and they're out for themselves? And how do you create that environment where you're fostering trust and where people can take risks without being afraid of being fired or facing negative repercussions in the workplace from their boss or from a coworker or anything else like that?
Okay, so let's go back to authenticity. It's like, do we truly know when someone's being their authentic self? When I say evil, my answer to if someone's being authentic is no. We can't be the judge if someone's lying or someone's being deceitful, and we just have to put that at face value. What I've done over the years with my companies and how I monetize, you know, on full transparency, the way I made money, I believe I was evil. So to say everyone's evil, it's obviously it's there are good people out there. I'm not going to say there isn't, but to find that person or to know if someone's truly being authentic, it's not possible. Like, I have lunch with Glenn. We talk, we beat each other up, and we go back and forth because we're trying to find a true answer, a true solution. And we're all here today because we're trying to find a true solution. If we found a true solution or a true authentic person, we wouldn't be here. That's just reality. So the falsity of us believing what we believe or looking for some rainbow, you know, with a pot of gold at the end, it's not true. And that's, listen, Pete, like, I get what you're saying, but this is how I believe and look at society, and it's done really good for me so far. So if I went into every intention thinking that everyone is inherently good, then I would be homeless on the street.
You know, Pete, I'm going to jump in. I'm good. And I think everyone that follows me or knows me knows that. So you might be wondering, why am I good friends with someone who thinks that everyone's evil. Well, we've had different experiences in our life. But at the core, both Nik and I want to be authentic. And we've just traveled different paths to get to that realization. But we shouldn't discount Nik's comments just because he feels that way. And this is the whole point, I think, of what we're trying to say here is authenticity requires all of us to seek discomfort. In other words, there's a lot of people out there, and I know of a few that are on this call who have thought that maybe they were evil, even though they're not, just because how people are perceiving their differences that are quite extreme. And I think what I'm getting out of all this is that everyone sees the world through their own lens. And we can either judge them, we could agree with them, or we take the time to learn about that perspective. Because there's a lot of people right now, whether we want to accept this fact or not, that are unhappy, depressed, and we're not trying to bring the discussion down. We're just having a real conversation because this is what everybody's thinking and feeling. And people want solutions. So Pete, I respect, and you're always asking good questions, Pete, and keep asking them. Did you want to follow up while we got you?
Yeah, I actually want to thank you for that comment really quickly, because I think that's a really good point. And there's a really good metaphor about just treating people, whether they're as evil people or good people. It's saying that you have two wolves inside of you. There's a good wolf and a bad wolf, and they're going to fight it out to the death, and which wolf's going to win. And of course, the answer is the wolf you feed. So if you treat people like they're good, I think people will end up being good. But going back to that comment you made about people having different experiences, I wanted to ask Nik if he had a comment on, instead of treating people and assuming that they're out for themselves and they're not being authentic, they haven't found themselves, if you just stand with compassion and just say, okay, I don't understand their experiences, but I want to understand, I want to just be compassionate towards them. How do you think that would help foster trust in the workplace and foster the conditions that can help people find their authentic selves?
I think you're right, Pete, from that perspective. But this goes back to the earlier part of the conversation, is that people want the quickest road or the easiest way to believe that they're truly authentic. What you're asking to do is hard work, and people don't want to do hard work. People don't want to be nice to other people, whether it's out of selfishness or greed. We're all trying to pretend we're something that we're not. And I agree with you. Like, listen, you're right. And I'm not saying, when I say everyone's evil, I'm saying the majority of everyone's evil because it's the easiest road to go down because everyone else is doing it. So that's kind of where I'm coming from that perspective. But I agree with what you said, and I agree with what Glenn said. We all have different roadmaps. Just, it is what it is. And if we knew the perfect roadmap, we wouldn't be here. Everyone would be on that same road, that same highway, going to the same place. But you know what? Some people take the 5, some people take the 405. It's a different world now. And if we knew the answer, we'd all be on the same road. So thank you, Pete. That was a great conversation.
And we've got some other people that disagree with this notion of evil, and I don't want to stick on it too far, but I think it's important that we address it with a couple of things. Now, Petra said on the chat that self-made leaders, often of startups with zero leadership skill and nothing but ego, will continue to abuse people that join their team with the best intentions, often to be retaliated against for disagreeing with or pointing out harmful habits or behaviors. I've experienced those things early in my career. And then Brad thinks, you know what, Nik, I think there's another word for evil, and that can be a offline debate. But I think the point that you're making is that if we could use terms that we could all relate to, it's easy to take the easy way out when things get hard. And I can tell you firsthand, as someone that has had to reinvent themselves many times in my life hasn't been easy. And what I've learned is that when you're good, it actually becomes even harder work to get to where you want to go, because you move along a path of envy and a path of people that unfortunately are looking out more for themselves than others. And I myself personally is one that looks out for others before myself. And I think this is one of the reasons why you're seeing example and live right here that how Nik and I can become friends, because why? We're using our diversity of thought to create a common purpose. And I think that this is an example of when maybe extreme points of view can actually bring people together, but people are afraid to even test that point of view, thinking that they'll be judged. And so rather than judge Nik or judge anybody else, I'd rather get to know them as an individual to understand their point of view and appreciate, their experiences and background. So we've got another question here. This one comes from Walt. Go ahead, Walt, fire away.
Yeah, Nik, I was just gonna say, I appreciate your honesty. I think it takes a lot of courage to kind of come out with a statement like that I think may not be popular or widely agreed upon. But I'm just curious about, if you could talk a little bit about your goals in life and what you value most in life.
Yes. So thank you, Walt. So I know, and I'm not trying to throw everyone off with the evil thing, but we're talking about authenticity. Like, this is authenticity, right? So why would I not be authentic and tell you guys what I truly authentically believe in evil? And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing or good thing. As far as goals in life, I know this is going to sound even worse, but I think you judge a man based on their funeral. If there are truly crowds of people mourning, whether it's bad or good, that person has actually put change or some sort of effect on the world. And I think my story is still going. There's a lot of things that I want to accomplish from a media perspective, to change the narrative. But the only way to change a narrative, to truly be heard, is to have reaction. And I've been really good at that within my career, is to get people to wake up from a perspective of, what did he just say? And then you start thinking, and you're like, you know what? He's crazy, but he's kind of right. And then that little inch, that little opening I get is when I can come in and really tell you, hey, like, this is why I think this. And it's okay for you to think for yourself. That's being authentic, being yourself. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I'm here to let you say, okay, well, I kind of get what he's saying, but he's kind of a jerk, but he does have some sort of point. So from that perspective, Walter, it's like, hey, I want to take whatever my legacy is, and I want to put my footprint on this world. So when I leave this earth, people are still Googling me or whatever they're doing, saying, wow, that guy really did save the internet. And going back to what I was talking about at the beginning with the case law stuff, what people don't know is that when I was going through litigation for the CDA stuff, the Communications Decency Act stuff, I had the lawyers of YouTube. I had the lawyers of Google, of TripAdvisor, of Amazon. Amazon came to my aid. Zuckerberg came to my aid. These guys spent millions of dollars to make sure I didn't go down. The guy that they didn't like me. And for the same reason why people don't like me is because I do truly speak my mind. Whatever, it is what it is. But that's who I am, because I don't want to wake up tomorrow saying, you know what? I just wanted people to like me, so I just said what I had to say. That doesn't make me feel good about myself. What makes me feel good about myself is like, hey, these big Fortune 500 companies, whatever, they didn't have a choice. If I went down, free speech would have went down. Nobody would, YouTube would have been, Facebook would have been done, because Zuckerberg and these guys would have been held liable for what you said about someone else. So I was the guy that fought for all these people. And what happened is I won, but I always stayed true to myself. And yeah, I was the dirty guy or whatever they called me, but at the end of the day, I fought for something that I believed in, and it stuck. So that for me, I'm proud of. And now the next chapter is, how do I take what I'm doing with Celeb and showing that there's a culture out there, there's a divide that needs to be mended. And I'm doing a travel show where I'm going all over the world and I'm learning about, I wouldn't say the meaning of life, but how to connect with people in a way where they're not going to be as upset about the things that I say, but I can still open their hearts. And that's what I'm trying to do.
So we're going to take a moment to talk about 10M in just a moment, but I'd like to ask Ed Kim to join us live. He's got a question for you that I think is going to take us to a whole other level of authenticity. Ed?
Hi, thanks, Glenn. Hi, Nick. I want to thank you for sharing your story and your thoughts. I'm in healthcare. I'm an oncologist and spent a lot of time doing research, and I'm based in Southern California now at City of Hope. And I know, you may have your own personal health battles, as we all do. I mean, I think your platform and your following is amazing. And I was wondering if there's an opportunity to promote awareness for research and then making sure we have diverse populations included into research.
Are you asking personally, or are you asking from a perspective of celebrity and influence of others?
Yeah, both. I would say personally, I think there's aspects, but also professional.
So here's the issue that I always see, and it comes off unauthentic, especially in the celebrity realm. Is you'll have a celebrity who gets find some sort of charity or organization or for me, for example, I have multiple sclerosis. So and it's not something that I put out there because it's really something that I'm battling by myself. But I get this all the time, Ed, where people come up to me and they're like, hey, like you have it. Why don't you help others? Why don't you use your platform? Because it's honestly, it's a reminder that I have it. So, and people, going back to evil, they're not nice. You try to help people, and there's always going to be that group of the other side who come in and fight. So for me personally, I'll pick and choose my battles of stuff that I want to help with. And obviously I do it behind the scenes, not publicly, because I feel that's more rewarding than using it as like a humble brag, which most of these celebrities do, which makes me really mad. But there's always a place for it. Yeah, platforms are great. Like social media is a massive, like it's great. It builds awareness, but where does it go besides a one-day plug and post where these celebrities or influencers get their ass kicked by people, their butts kissed by people they don't even know, to give them some sort of, it boosts their ego. We're going back to ego, which is completely false.
Yeah, no, I can totally understand that. And, maybe it's sort of a behind the scenes focus. I totally hear you on those things.
It has to be.
MS, for instance, it's interesting. I'm working with a group that's trying to promote diversity into clinical trials, specifically through multiple sclerosis. And one of the things that comes out is it's really not known how much the African American population is actually affected by MS. And I have a couple of friends who were affected with it. And it's just one of these things where I'm trying to lead an effort nationally just to change the actual structure of clinical trials through the NCI, through the FDA. And we've done some of those things. But I mean, I agree with you. It's about trying to help the greater good, not to bring the spotlight on yourself, but trying to raise some awareness.
And I agree with you too. But the problem is, it's just, and I know everyone's going to kill me, but not only are the general population of society going back to the quick fix and why it's almost like a dumbing down, because they want to feel the numbness of everything that's going on around us. Everything you're saying is so beautiful, Edward. Like everything you're saying is beautiful. And it's something that like me personally, I would get behind it from a private perspective, not from a public perspective, because the audiences are not smart. They can't comprehend it. And this even goes back to when I talk to Glenn and we talk about authenticity. the public and the massive numbers that you need to actually make change, they need to be, it needs to be dumbed down to a way that they think that it benefits them to do it. So everything you're saying is truly authentic, but it's too highbrow for them to grasp, and they're not even, it won't even get into their syntax because they're just going to reject it. So if there's a way to promote it where it's a dumber down version, then it works. But then there's no longevity base. So it's almost like a waste of time. Like you're putting all this effort in to be something and to do something really good and really something that has substance, but it just rejects. It doesn't get to where it needs to go because the core audience just doesn't want to take the time to accept it or help because it doesn't benefit them.
Ed, thank you so much for the question. And I'm going to be bold here and I might get in trouble, but I'm going to make sure that you and Nick talk offline because you guys are actually more connected in ways than maybe you guys don't even know yet. So I'm going to make that work, Nick. Is that all right?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Okay. Very, very good. So Nick, tell us, let's kind of shift gears a little bit here. Tell us a little bit about 10M, what it's all about. Tell us a little bit about Celeb Magazine, why you're making your comeback. Tell us a little bit about you going to Harvard so that people can feel as if you're a respected journalist. I mean, we're going to get into your currency that you've created, and then we have a special surprise for Nick and everyone when we do the world premiere unveiling of his NFT, a non-fungible token. So we got a lot to cover here in the next 15 minutes. So tell us about 10M.
I'll be quick. 10M stands for 10 minutes. It's what I believe is the longest possible attention span that we have in our minds to watch creative content. What I'm trying to do is, I wouldn't say where Anthony Bourdain left off, but more to appeal to a younger generation that doesn't believe in culture, doesn't believe in travel. Travel to me is the most powerful thing in the world. I think when we meet other people that aren't ourselves, we take a piece of them. Like I was telling Bradley earlier, we take a piece of everything every day, even when we don't even know we're doing it. It could be good parts, could be bad parts, but we do that. So we shot our first episode in Montana. I'm not a snow guy. I don't even, it's my first time on a horse. Like, for me, it's culture shock, but it's those things that you need to have to feel love. So for me, it was amazing to do this first episode. The next episode's in Lake Como. I've never been to Italy. So this is, well, at least I've been to Italy, but just not those type of parts of Italy. And my thing now is, how can I meet the smallest person in the neighborhood and understand why they're so happy? Because during these weird trips of travel, I'm noticing that the person who is in this small town that doesn't care about COVID, doesn't care about anything that the outside world touches, is kind of like the happiest person because they don't have those outside elements just constantly just bashing that anxiety on them. So the show, you can download it. We have the app is called Celeb. I recommend everyone watch this first show. Tell me what you think. DM me.
It's awesome. I'm jumping in and I want to learn how to dog sled. That was incredible.
Yeah.
No. What a show. What an experience. So tell us about why you went back to school, Nick. Quickly tell us about this, because I think that this represents what I believe is your search to make sure that your identity is authentically understood.
I think the school thing is just purely ego. I honestly believe that, like, but from a good ego, not like a bad ego. It's more of like, hey, I'm just getting sick of all the respected people being dignified because they went to this school or they're the CEO of this company. Everyone's the same to me. So I don't look at it from one person better than the other, but I'm just kind of doing this because I just feel like the lack of respect I get for the things that I do, it just burns me inside. So, and honestly, like, I did it kind of off the whim, and now I really enjoy it. I love education. I love at my age, I'm 42, the knowledge I'm getting and the perspective I'm getting reading about philosophy and all these things is just, it's making me feel so much stronger every day. So the school thing, it is what it is. But for me, it's more about showing my kids that, hey, like life is long.
We'll take another question from the audience. But before we do, Nik, tell us about why you got into the currency business. Is this all about the next level of authenticity?
So I've been dealing with the crypto thing since it started, and it's just so volatile. Every day it's like, oh my God, I'm a millionaire. And then tomorrow I'm broke, so it's all over the place. And there was this company that approached me called BitClout, and they were like, hey, we want to start making people into currency. And I thought it was a great idea to start Nikcoin because I believed it would never lose value. As long as I'm successful and I'm kicking butt, then I know that the value of Nik Richie is going to keep climbing. And it did. Within a month, it was $100 a coin. It went to 1,000. I think it's at 1,000 now. So, and I truly believe it's going to get to 10,000. So it's the best thing about this, it's based on the person, the individual. So if I start failing as a brand or a model or ambassador or a business person, then the value of my coin decreases, and it holds me accountable. And that is the thing that gives me motivation. If I can be authentic, if I can be accountable, then everybody wins with me. And it's on my shoulders. It's not up to you, Glenn. It's up to me.
How can we bring that same attitude into the workplace?
That's a question for Pete. That's not.
No, I'm having fun with you. I mean, this is about being self-directed and recognizing that we should be the ones that are the evaluators of our own performance. If not, we're falling into that trap again of being what others want us to be rather than what we seek to be ourselves. Well, we got about 7 minutes. Love to get one last question. I'm going to call him out because he said he'd asked something else before he got off. Brad, thanks for joining us again. I know your head's spinning with ideas. What are you thinking right now, Brad? Brad, did we lose you? Okay. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do the unveiling, the world premiere unveiling of your NFT. And again, if those that are on the line are not familiar with what an NFT is, it's a non-fungible token, which means what? That it's certified as a digital asset to be unique and therefore not interchangeable. So what we're going to unveil right now is the only one in the world. And this was a gift from GLLG to you, Nik. I'm sure this interviewed or our conversation made a lot of people think about a lot of different things. And if it brought about a little discomfort, that's okay, because that's what authenticity should bring. But in the end, it's about, do you see me? Do you know me? And we all have something to contribute. So, Paulo, if you can go ahead and share the unveiling. Nik hasn't even seen this yet. Let's see if this meets his approval. Here we go.
This is going to be fun. No way.
Nik, what do you think?
No way. That's awesome. Paulo, you made that?
He did.
That's genius right there. So here's my thing with this whole NFT thing, Glenn. Can I talk about an NFT for a second?
Sure. You can close with NFT and I'll have a final comment.
We've come to a place in our world where the art is more valuable than the human. And when I look at this, I look at my bank account, and then I look at someone that's going to probably buy this. It's probably be worth more than my bank account. That bothers me a little bit, but at the same time, like, this is the world we're in now. This is a three-dimensional object, one of one. It's beautiful. And I'm not saying that in a narcissistic type of way. It really is beautiful art. And this thing is me, but it's going to be valued more than my life itself. which that is weird. And thank you, Bradley, for calling me a badass.
So I'd like to just ask this question because this is why we came here. And I'd love for someone to be courageous enough to get off the mute and answer the question. So based upon this conversation, is your culture truly authentic? Who wants to take a stab at that one? I'm not going to call any names. I want to be respectful. But is our culture truly authentic? Well, I'll answer that for you. You know, I mentioned it very early on in my opening comments that unfortunately we've reached a point in many respects. Thank you for the chat there, Niraj, appreciate that. That we're manufacturing authenticity. And when you're manufacturing authenticity, you don't have a culture that's truly authentic. So as I leave you today, I just want you to think about this. You've met two totally different people who care about each other, who spoke live, no rehearsal, no nothing, and just talked. Are you seeking the discomfort to do that for yourself, to learn about yourself? You know, I learned early on in my life that I don't care if you're the CEO or the janitor, and I'm not trying to diminish a janitor, but unfortunately, that's what standardization does. And I don't really care who you are or what you do. I care about you as a human being, because I've learned through my own work that you can take anyone and make them a little bit bigger, I meant better, a little bit more confident, a little bit more wiser, because that's what life does to you. We just don't know what to do with it. So I want to just thank Nik for just being himself today, because this is how our conversations roll in between a nice dinner and a good conversation about what life's about. So Nik, thanks again. Really appreciate it. Do you have any final comments?
No. What time are we meeting for beers? And it's your time. It's your turn to pay. So I just want to remind you that.
Well, I think Brad Lee wants to take care of us when we go to Vegas next time. But look, as we always leave the show, when you lead in the age of personalization, you will see things that others don't. Do what others won't, and keep pushing when prudence says quit. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Paulo.
Oh, and by the way, if you're still online with us, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and social media at Glenn Yope so that you can stay in touch with our recent content around leadership in the age of personalization. Have a great one, guys. Hang tight, Nik.